All right, all right. Welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chaney podcast. I am your host, Nathan Chaney, and today we're going to talk about yard and dock scheduling and management with Neil, who's the VP of Business Development for C3 Solutions. He's calling in today from Montreal, the Great White North. Maybe it's warming up there. Give us a lowdown of the weather in a second.
Yeah,
Is it
very
good?
good at the moment. It's like mid-20s, blue skies, and yes, after the winter we had, it's kind of much needed. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. It's warming up here in Texas as well. We'll send some of this warm air your direction here shortly. So hey Neil, thanks for coming on and sharing some about your story and your company and whatnot. But let me just hand over the digital microphone to you real quick and let you tell the audience a little bit more about what about yourself and what y'all are all about.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for the intro, and really great to talk to you today. So yeah, C3 Solutions, we're a cloud-based SaaS solution, the kind of in the freight tech logistics world. 25 in 25. We're 25 years this year. Just had our anniversary in June, which we're really proud about. And again, in our field, that's quite a long time in sort of software solutions and logistics. It's kind of quite niche and new, but we've been in the game for a long time. So yeah, my job is trying to help supply chain leaders, logistics managers, warehouse managers to optimize their planning and inbound and outbound flows on these big, huge sites that they have, which are integral parts of the supply chain. It goes from the port right through to the store and the home delivery type scenarios. So yeah, I speak to a lot of people from all around the globe every day to try and understand how we can best help find solutions to tailor, our software to giving them big return on investment and just making the lives of their users a lot easier and less stressful day to day. Before I was at C3, I was actually a customer of C3's a couple of jobs ago. I worked for a big parcel post company in the UK. So I know what it's like to have no system, spreadsheets, radios, clipboards, chaos basically, and then to go through a cycle of acquiring software, doing the project, implementing, testing, rolling out, and then sort of going land and expand across the entire operation. So yeah, that's helped me in my day-to-day to understand what it is the customer really is looking for and how to best serve them and make their lives better and make their businesses more profitable and scalable.
I liked that term you just used. If I heard it right, was it land and expand?
It is, yeah. Not my term. I borrowed it from someone else, but yeah, that's tend to what we do. We kind of start in a test warehouse, a pilot, proof of concept, and then once our clients know that can work, then we start to roll it out to across the network. Because especially a place like Canada, the US, Australia, huge regional hubs, right? So having one central distribution center doesn't work. You often need many in a different region, all working to each other. It's why they call it the supply chain. There are many links to it. So yeah, that tends to be our strategy to get in, prove how much benefit we can give the people and their clients, their partners and stakeholders, and to the wider reaches of their entire network.
Well, I'm interested to dive deeper into the weeds on just the zeros and ones and the nuts and bolts of things that you do there at C3. But first, I would like to kind of roll back the clock a little bit to you personally, and just a little bit your story of where you grew up, what your upbringing was like, and who is Neil, before he became this kind of working adult out in the world. Tell us a little bit about that, Neil.
Yeah, you can probably tell by my accent I'm not originally from Canada or North America, but yeah, I grew up in a small town in the UK called Luton, which is about 30 miles north of the centre of London. So it's kind of a bit of a commuter town. A lot of people are working in and around the capital. Quite an industrial town, so I always had a job when I was young, so learned pretty quickly the value of hard work. My dad was pretty strict on making sure I knew the value of a dollar, or as a pound, as we would call it. But yeah, I was very interested in working as quick as I could, but I took the route via college. I went to university. I studied philosophy, so not really a business-leaning thing at all, but it helped me with problem solving and try to understand how things, the foundational problems, and how to kind of use your brain and use techniques to get to the core of the issue and how to solve things. And as soon as I left university, I was just drifting. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was signing up to tons of internships and graduate schemes. And it was a real strange story, but I was at a friend's funeral and I bumped into a guy who was recruiting graduates for a big parcel company that was a long way from, it was in Birmingham, which was a long way away from my town at the time. He said, hey, I can give you an application, and I call it, it was a super straight shooting guy. He was like, I don't know you, I'm not going to help you, but, so I applied thinking I was maybe going to get a call, an interview. I got a call, went into the various rounds and made it into this big, they're probably the biggest parcel carrier in the UK at the moment, a company called DPD. And at that time, they were going through a real change and trying to set themselves apart from the market, because they were a bit of a medium player in parcels and logistics. And I joined the graduate scheme just around the time of the sort of big recession in 2006, 2007. So it wasn't a great time to join, but it taught me a lot about how to operate very, on fine margins, and how, your people are really important to getting things done and making things happen in your organization. So yeah, I jumped between lots of different sort of graduate roles. You do 6 months here, 3 months there, understand the business. And I was thrust into a position because a couple of guys left the business, and I was very, very young and got a management job. And then it was just a very steep learning curve into management at 22 years old. And I found myself in jobs that managed facilities that had these big yards and gates and, schedules that kind of, when I was there, they were done on spreadsheets, pieces of paper, even these things called T-card boards, where there's just a big thing in an office and you put the trailer in the slot, which is door 12, trailer 1, 2, 3 goes, and it was, if you think about it in modern terms, and that was only 20 years ago, it was pretty archaic, pretty old school. So yeah, at that time, we were looking for anything that would do it better. And we stumbled across C3 Solutions, Canadian company, but they had a worldwide reach, had a few clients already in the UK. And I thought, this is pretty cool, something that takes the headaches and the chaos away from managing these huge. We had sort of distribution centers with 200 doors for individual trailers, 1,000 parking bays, so big facilities. The ones in the US are even bigger than that when you talk about the Walmarts and these sorts of businesses. And yeah, found myself working alongside these guys, and it was a great project. And I think I got quite a bit of kudos, probably from C3's hard work, because I was the guy championing this in the company. It all went well. It did well for me. And, joined another business that didn't work out so well. And then these guys are like, hey, you'd probably sell this product really well. And I said, hey, I work in operations. I'm not that sort of guy. I'm not a salesperson. They were like, nah, you'll be fine. You've got a story you can tell. And yeah, 6 years later, moved to another country, to another part of the world. And, I'm just really keen to sort of tell the story of C3 and how it changed my life and my operation and the team, that I was part of, and how it can save a lot of people a lot of time, effort, and money from doing stuff the manual way. Yeah. I've always been into sports my whole life, so I love this team challenge mentality. I'm a big soccer fan. So yeah, I'm really just someone who understands the power of good technology, the power of good innovation, and good thinking. And yeah, it's now my daily conversation, and it sounds a bit corny, a bit cheesy, but I love it. It's a conversation I love to have again and again, and every day is a different conversation, but there's always on subjects that I really, really like. And you meet a lot of cool people in supply chain. Pre-COVID, no one really understood that a problem in Asia could mean a problem with stuff being on the shelves of, in the storefronts of your local store, right? Whereas now everybody, it's a bit more front page news that we have a supply chain, and in certain parts, it's a little bit vulnerable, let's say. So yeah, now it's a bit more a rock star thing to be working in logistics. It's kind of cool because that's helped younger people get into the world, and especially technology that helps the younger people kind of adhere to it. You don't have to have 20 years in the yard anymore to understand how it works. You can figure it out with good technology and good data pretty quickly. So yeah, that's about it for my history and how I got here.
Excellent. I love the serendipitous nature of the conversation at a funeral. That
No,
if that had not occurred, right, like you and I would not be having this conversation right now, right?
probably not. Exactly. Yeah. It's crazy because so many of the things, and it just so happens that when we were trying to acquire the software, I was kind of overruled because C3 was a little bit more expensive than other clients. So my big boss said, no, you're going to go with these other guys. I went with these other guys. It didn't go so well. And if that hadn't happened, and maybe it would have been different also if if those guys had delivered a good solution, and maybe I wouldn't have come this way. And yeah, it just so happened that it kind of didn't go to plan, and we had to go back to the company I'm at now just to see if they could still do the project. And luckily they had some ability to do that. And yeah, it's all sliding doors moments, I think, in careers and in life, isn't it? So
Well, we could probably dig into the philosophical components of all of this, right? But that might be a topic for another day.
indeed.
So I also really appreciate that you kind of came to what you're doing today by being a user, by being an end user and an operator. And you said how, hey, I'm an operations guy, I'm not a sales guy. I think most people would always say, look, whenever you can bring that operator's perspective to the boardroom or to the proposal meeting, I mean, you've got the chips are kind of stacked in your favor because you can speak the customer's language as good or better than they can, right?
I think so, yeah. And I think in the world of anyway, whether it's construction, logistics, shipping, these are jobs that are kind of tough, right? They have seasonality that's pretty, like you can go up in volume in the supply chain, like 200, 300% during the, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas. So, they're not for the faint-hearted. A lot of the times, these roles, especially the more senior things, because it's quite a lot of pressure, millions of dollars on the line in your budgets every year and stuff. So, I think when you can go into a boardroom and you can kind of talk to the guy who drives the truck, and often the guy who's the chief operating officer probably started somewhere down in one of those operational jobs, and it gave him the sort of authenticity or the experience to do those bigger roles. So when you can kind of have those conversations, like you say, in a language that's understandable, and you can relate to the problems and the pressures, that a piece of software that flashes and looks great is going to fall flat on its face if it doesn't really understand the operation that it's working alongside, because that's the sort of the beauty is in the tailored nature of good software. If it doesn't follow the process steps, it doesn't capture the right data at the right time, if it doesn't make things easier for the users than the way they're doing, then it's not gonna be worth it. It might be bought, you might get a sale, but then after a year, they're just going to go back to using it in a different way or looking for a solution that does everything they need. So I think, understanding not only what we sell, but how to make the product better is a good thing at C3, because we have a lot of people that have either done 25 years at C3, which is, that's a lot of projects at, sites and yards around the world, or they come from the industry themselves and they understand what, the difference between good and great, it can be kind of huge sometimes, and making sure you don't miss a heartbeat. It's a chain not only in terms of the globe, but the process step from getting a trailer on site to the right door to the right parking bay, then to be loaded and go out, is very intricate. And if you delay or fail on one of those steps, the whole thing comes in, falls in on itself. So, understanding the not only the importance, but the know-how, the workings of the mechanism is super important. And I think C3 really lives and breathes the whole listening to our customers, understanding, how we can tailor our solutions to really make every step count.
There's another component to your story that I think is really unique, but maybe it's not terribly unique, is the fact that in supply chain, I think a lot of times we talk about how one day you can be on one side of the table as the customer, and you may very well find yourself on the other side of the table as that solution provider the next day. And that it kind of speaks to that idea of not burning bridges, of networking, of the fact that a supply chain is made up of nodes and links, and also personal relationships and professional relationships are very similar in that regard. Can you talk a little bit about like that networking and that kind of the fact that supply chain is a small world? Any fun stories in that regard?
Yeah, I think one fun thing is I was working in the industry. It started in 2006, I think, 2007. And so some of the guys and girls that were working, they were graduates when I was in sort of mid-management positions. They're in big jobs now in some of these big companies now that I'm going to talk to. So having that relationship, and also just having a good level of humility, because, some people can go a few steps in their career in 5 years, and others it might take 15, 20. Sometimes it's been in the right place at the right time, or being very, very good, or your company goes through loads of expansion. But, I've always made it a thing to never burn bridges. Sometimes in those jobs, you do have a few little friction moments where the guy's the distribution guy, you're the transport guy, and, although you're fighting for the same team, you've often got different budgets, and the transport person wants to put more items on the trailer, but the operator wants to have more trailers so that they can increase their overall throughput and get things out earlier. So I think being collaborative, being understanding, and being realistic about, look, we've got to share a common goal, is really important. And I think even wider than that, like even within our industry, there's a lot of collaboration that happens even in competitors. Like, so two big grocers, two big retailers, two big parcel guys will often share best practices, will work on committees to do with the highways, to do with driver recruitment. And I think that's always been in supply chain. And I've always tried to be a student of the game and understand that, you'll do more to listen to drivers, to listen to warehouse workers, and not just think that you know all the things. And that's, I guess, being young, you had no choice. Being young in management, you have to listen, otherwise you're going to fail because you're the young dude, right? You're just out of college, buddy. You don't know what you're doing, and you have to play that humility. And I've just tried to keep that throughout. And I think there's just a lot of people like that. Like a really good friend of mine is a COO of a big company that we work with, and he's as humble as they get. If you met him, you wouldn't know he's one of the most high-powered jobs in European logistics because he has the ability to listen, talk about you. It's not all about him and his role. And I think, these things are, the networks are often, they come back around again. The person who used to be a coworker now is someone who might be buying your product, or they're on the committee of looking from procurement to maybe build a solution or something like that. So, super important. And like I say, it's we had a saying in parcels, you're only as good as your last sortation. So like yesterday, you failed, you left a load of items, and, it doesn't matter. You had 5 months of unbelievable, performance. The person who didn't get their iPhone on time, or they didn't get the new video game, they're blaming your client for failing. And that's all they can remember. So, being arrogant or being full of yourself is not a good game in our sort of segment, in our sector. So I'm definitely part of that. Stay humble. Every day's a new, and teamwork is the only way to go.
I feel, you've just kind of been giving a couple pieces of advice here in this last few seconds here. So I think this is a great time to ask the question that I try to ask everybody, which is, do you have a quote, sort of like a life quote that you live by, that you kind of tell folks about every chance you get?
Yeah, I was really lucky enough. Like, as someone who did a graduate scheme at my old company, they kind of put me in charge of a part of graduate recruitment, and I used to have a lot of people that came out of some of the world's top educational institutions. Super smart, really hardworking, amazing at getting things done, and good communicators. But a lot of them wanted to be CEO yesterday, right? Like, they've seen the TED Talk, they've read the self-help book, or they've heard a story about how somebody rose to the top of an organization at 25, or they were a startup person that made it, made $1 billion in 10 years, and they want that straight away. And I think the saying, and it's maybe a bit corny, but like, the cream rises to the top. I think, like, if you're a hard worker, if you apply yourself well, if you're humble, you can work with people, and you can get it done, right? You will get to the top in these organizations, because people retire, things expand. You just have to look at how many of the big companies build new facilities, have new departments. I mean, AI is, okay, it's replacing some jobs, but it's also creating new ones. So, patience, staying put is it's not just a graph like that. It's often like shelves. Like, you might have 3 promotions in 5 years and then wait another 10 for something. So the cream rises to the top. If you have confidence in yourself, and you stay in a good business with good mentors and, good solutions, then, you will get to where you want. You'll probably exceed where you thought you would get if you take that advice. And that's people that I worked alongside or worked underneath. Like, I had some good mentors, and they always did that. Take your time, run your own race, and the cream will rise to the top soon enough.
Excellent. It reminds me of one of sort of like, it's hard to pick just one, like the cream rises to the top. But another one, I think that's a parallel to that, is that you kind of have to find some joy and satisfaction in the day to day on your journey, and not always just be hanging your happiness on that next promotion or that next big sale, because you're going to get there, and the excitement and the ecstatic sort of celebration of that moment will come, and then as humans, we will kind of move on and set our next milestone, right? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's another thing about, kind of, I totally believe that if you kind of don't enjoy the day to day, if you're not just living and loving the now, then maybe looking at something, diversifying your role a little bit. Because if it's just about the goal, And there's lots of studies about this, that the people who are truly the happiest are not the people who make the big exit and live on a pile of cash in a place where they want. It's the people who are on that ascent, right? It's the people, it's pushing towards it, seeing your goal, pushing past that, go to the new one. And like you say, just enjoying the moment and finding something that you love, because it's a cliche, but when you do a job where or any pursuit, anything you do in life, whether you like home improvements, you do stuff, but it's not just the destination, it's the journey that's right, part of the fun. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I just think you will work a much better expertise, or a locker of expertise for yourself, if you're truly passionate about the thing that you're doing. Now, if you're just there looking at finance books because that's what you were told was going to make you rich and give you a great life, and you don't like it, you're going to be overtaken by the person who just eats it for breakfast because that's their thing, right? So yeah, find something you love, and as they say, you won't work a day in your life if you're in a job that you love.
Yep. Talking about the journey and kind of moving through things makes me think about the fact that C3 is celebrating 25 years in business, as you mentioned kind of in the opening here. Can you kind of walk us through what that history, what that timeline has looked like at C3, even though it predates your time there
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well?
Well, it's kind of legend, I guess. So you learn quick enough, and even as a customer, I was really impressed with how long everybody had worked at the company. But yeah, two guys, two co-owners, Nick Couture and Greg Braun. They were working for a big transport company in Canada, and they developed a solution that was there for managing yards, and it was just for the company they were working for. And the guy who owned the company kind of helped them sort of develop that further, and they created a business as an offshoot of that called C3 Solutions in the year 2000. And they started off small, as often you do in this sense, and very, very quickly became, I guess, one of the pioneers of yard management as we know it today. The YMS term kind of comes from solutions like Nick and Greg's. And I think they became synonymous with just quality, experience, working with people and understanding how their operations went. And they used to have an old system called Yard Smart, which was an on-premise system, or before the cloud, before the internet, really. Well, there was the internet, but you couldn't run a system off it. Yeah, they these are two very humble guys, very, very smart, gifted guys, but incredibly humble. And through listening to clients and building a reputation of performance, and making sure your products really did what you sold it as. So, over the years, they kind of built from a group of like 5 people to now the company is like, we're still kind of lean and mean at 55 employees, but our customers, we've got thousands of sites around the globe that use our system. So really big blue chip companies in the US, Canada, Europe, Australia. I've even got stuff in Asia now, clients in Asia. So they've kind of just kept that approach of, very measured, very meticulous, very customer-centric driven solutions, and stayed with the cutting edge technology that was available out there. So we moved on to a cloud platform sort of 5-6 years ago, maybe more, 7, and quickly benefited from all the benefits that gives you, just the flexibility, the security elements, and the fact that any of our users can access the yards that they operate, or the schedule that they plan, from their cell phone or from a laptop or an iPad on the beach or whatever. So, having that cloud-based thing really kind of changed it. And we've recently enhanced our product profile, where we now have a driver application, which is like a driver community, where drivers can log on, do a pre-check-in, automated check-in at the gate, and then the system has full visibility of that driver where they're at. And then the driver also gets instruction directly on their cell phone of what's next in the step. So we've always done that on the yard, and now we're doing that on the road. So the guys continue to innovate, and there's a real culture of innovation. And it doesn't matter where the idea comes from. You don't have to be on the executive board to have the ideas about where the solution goes next. And I think that has really, really paid dividends for C3. We just continue to listen to our customers, make sure that we don't miss a heartbeat. The lights are always on, and the system's at the most optimal to really reduce their spend, reduce their delays, make sure their clients, their carriers, suppliers, their users love our system just as much as they do. And we continue to evolve in that way, and try to be at the center of everything that the logistics world does in the future.
Again, kind of leaning back on that concept of the cream sort of rising to the top. Also, I think it's worth saying that the staying power, getting to the top and staying there and being relevant and in business for 25 years says a lot for the culture and the business and the way it approaches taking care of clients and customers.
Definitely, definitely. I think there are many people, especially in the kind of startup age, where someone has an idea, then they want an app, and then they want to just use tons and tons of marketing money to acquire business, and almost like you're building the tracks in front of the train as it's leaving the station. And all you end up doing is letting down your clients when you don't really have the solution that you think they wanted, or that you thought you would have, right? So the sort of tenacity of slow, steady, controlled growth, by working with clients and being realistic with expectations and managing those expectations, and really finding a synergy between the solution and what the sort of client needs, has been sort of central right through C3's history and continues to be. And I think that way you really make sure that you never have a bad reputation. And one thing that we find a lot is, we kind of makes it easy for when it comes to that process step in my sales team, is don't take our word for it, just speak to a client. And usually there's a client in the region or in the sort of country that we're talking to, and we step away from the call and we just say, look, just you ask them whatever you want. And when you've put the time in, you listen to your client, you build cutting edge solutions that are really tailored to what the client really needs and what they asked for and what they expect, then there's very few surprises in those conversations. And that gives you a lot of integrity and a lot of sort of, respect from the community, that even if people say, look, we don't need a system like yours because maybe we're very small guys, but, in a few years when we get to the size that we need a sort of best of breed, then we'll come and speak to you. And, that's great because, okay, you've lost a sale, but you've probably got an opportunity further down the line. And, we always try to, just like when I was saying about networking, C3 is always networking. We're trying to understand what's out there, what's new, and, working with partners to do that as well. So, yeah, I think just making sure you have that tenacity, staying power, and humility is always going to be key to keeping your business growing and moving in the right direction.
There's a particular kind of question I like to try to pose to folks that have global footprints and work across different markets and geographies and cultures. And that is, can you, somewhat summarize how you treat or how you see different logistics and transportation and warehousing systems in different countries operate? And do you kind of approach the process differently in different regions? And do you see some being more advanced and some maybe being a little bit lagging behind in how they are thinking about running their yards and dock operations?
Yeah, I think necessity is the mother of invention, they say. So a lot of the time, depends on the restriction of the country, will kind of dictate the innovation in that area. So in the North America, land is not that much of a problem. They're big countries, and there's the highway networks are nice. Pretty much, once you get out of the major cities, they can be kind of traffic free. So I think in that aspect, there's certain things that you wouldn't need in a solution in North America that you absolutely need in the UK or in Europe, because they're working on medieval roads and systems in small towns where you get to a certain place and there's only bicycles pedestrians that can go further. So when you dip into different markets, you realize that there's been some quite innovative solutions manually and in software to solve the unique problems for the region or for that area. Yeah, and I think that kind of the great thing with being global is you can kind of cherry pick some of these, because just because that enhancement works really, really well for a particular problem in Europe doesn't mean it couldn't help the guy on the west coast of America, right? Because he wants to get his parcels out quicker, or he wants to get his food trucks in sooner. So yeah, we're very lucky to have that local knowledge in lots of localities, and to because our software is very tailored to a client's sort of processes. We're not trying to sell an off-the-shelf product that works in Canada but doesn't work in Australia, for example. We listen, we understand, and even some legal stuff, checks and balances and driver things that need to be done. If you don't have a configurable, tailored system, that's very, very hard to go back to a client and say, yeah, we're going to have to develop you some software. It's going to take 9 months. Whereas for us, it's like, yeah, well, it's just a little option that we configure and take a few weeks rather than a few years, and we can make sure that we always hit the ground on the go live date on a big project. Yeah, that's very, very good. And again, the humility aspect, always listening. The language, I'm in Montreal, which is French Canada, so they speak French here as well as English. But when they speak to people in France, just the terminology can change. So just because one term is understood in French Canada doesn't mean it's going to be the same in France. So we become very, very good at understanding the nuanced context to certain things, and never just assuming that we know what's what and what's said there. And that kind of causes you to be a much more of an active listener and really understand I guess the regional nuances and some of the challenges that maybe you don't get back home.
So maybe to take that a step deeper, being that you are, the VP of business development, does that mean you kind of need to have sales teams and marketing strategies that are a little bit unique to each market and each region?
Absolutely. I mean, no, we kind of C3's marketing is quite unique. I mean, the guys, the output is fantastic. They are cutting edge. I mean, the stuff they do is truly amazing. And I think it's one of the ethos of the team is always to not only listen to the sales, look at the market, but try to build a lot of our stuff around the people's personas, because some of the people that are users are not necessarily buyers. So, it's like the difference between the person who maybe could get this benefit versus the person who's going to drive this through to their business. They need different stories, and they're all important, right? You can't just make sure you sell or market to one group. You need in modern software acquisition, there's often a buying committee of multiple people that are going to make that decision. So making sure they're all equipped, because it's not just about, we're not a company who tries to, we don't sell on BS, right? We 25 years in the game, a lot of successful projects, a lot of happy customers. So we're more like trying to equip the individual buying team members or committee groups with the right information that's relevant for them, so that when they get around to conclude what they want to do, that they're making the most informed decision based on what we can tell them. And as with any software that's best of breed, it's quite rich, right? There's a lot of detail in there. There's a lot of information, data, configurable elements, but we want to just highlight and kind of sort of solidify, distill the key messages for these people. So that's why I think our marketing is very cool, because it kind of tailors those people and tries to speak their language. And that could be local, that could be regional, it could be industry based, and our website's very cool. You can kind of search by industry, by who you are, and it will give you some more, let's say poignant, more sort of detailed information for your job role, for your business, for your industry, rather than a big one size fits all sort of campaign.
Interesting. Maybe as we kind of wrap up here, one kind of finalizing question here is looking back at yourself when you were a philosophy and business major in school, and if you were to kind of fast forward and see yourself to where you are today, what advice would you give yourself at that point in time to kind of like maybe shortcut or get to where you are today, that might have saved you a few sleepless nights?
Yeah, I think maybe I think any time when you try and be a perfectionist in life, like there's very few sort of worlds or few jobs where perfectionism truly is the best idea, because there's too many elements. And something like where I was, logistics, there's too many moving parts to be perfect. So I think maybe being a little less tough on myself at times, and maybe having the same sort of ethos with other teams, and maybe trying to be a bit more collaborative would have been better early on. And then I just think that these are cycles, right? So sometimes you have good times where the wind's in your sail, and you have bad times when you're kind of however much you try and move the needle, it's still going to stay where it's at, however much you innovate and however much you try. So I think just being a little bit more, taking a sports ethos really, is that new game, new mentality. Don't worry about the loss. Don't worry about not getting the right result. The game starts anew, and trying that approach a bit more. I think as I got older, I realized that these things are, there's peaks and troughs, and like you said in your earlier comment, the person with the most staying power is usually the person that if you look at great sports teams or great business leaders, it's usually the people that are the most tenacious and stick with a plan, a strategy, and kind of fulfill it, instead of kind of changing your mind every 5 minutes because things didn't work initially. So yeah, I think that's what I would tell myself.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, hey, Neil, thanks for coming on and sharing some of your time today, your experience and your expertise in logistics. And looking forward, I'm going to start making my way over to Europe and Canada and covering some events. And so hopefully we can cross paths soon.
Definitely. Really look forward to that. Thanks a lot for your time, and thanks. It was a really fun session.
Excellent.
All right. Take care.